Today we have new details about what was going to be added to Battlefront 2 before it was cancelled. We have new comments from former Battlefront 2 developers, new information on what this could mean for the future of Battlefront 3 and the possibility of former developers returning to work on a new game. We also have an update on the success of the Fortnite Star Wars event, with the recent announcement that Star Wars is coming to Fortnite Creative, meaning someone is most likely going to build Battlefront 3 in Fortnite. The community will do it themselves. Just do it! And details on the chances of Battlefront 2 coming back to life. There's so much new information to go over today. It's crazy how much can happen in a week, so make sure you stick around for all of it. And if you haven't already, please subscribe so I can get to 1 million subscribers before Battlefront 3 releases. Hey everyone, it's Andrew. So in the past week or so, former Battlefront 2 developers have been sharing stories and insight into the Battlefront 2 roadmap for what they were planning to bring to Battlefront 2, and also decisions they made along the way, and the reason the game is the way it is. The reason it was even brought back to life in the first place following the horrible launch it had. And before I start today, I just want to say thank you to all of these former Battlefront 2 devs for sharing all of this information and giving us this insight. It's so invaluable and it's so insightful to read and hear about what their intentions were and why they made the decisions they made to bring this game to life. Also, please let me know in the comments, if you could only choose one or the other, would you rather see the return of Battlefront 2 support and for them to continue updating it into the future, or for them to just make a new game, to make Battlefront 3? I'd love to hear your thoughts below. Do it. But today we're starting things off with a video made by the former lead animator who worked on Battlefront 2. His name is Harvey Newman, and he just made a video about the untold dev story of Battlefront 2, revealing things that we never knew before. I'd really recommend going and watching the video in your own time. I'll leave a link to it down below. And Harvey talks about how early on in Battlefront 2's development, they needed to choose one hero that they could work on that was going to be the template for the rest of heroes in the game, that was going to set the style of how Battlefront 2's hero combat worked, because they wanted to evolve it from both the original Battlefront games and Battlefront 2015.
That first initial Darth Maul, that is still the one that is in the game right now, that became the linchpin for the characters. And what we had to find was very much about the combat, right? How would Jedi combat with lightsabers happen in game in a way that was satisfying? So we had to be clever about deciding how much effort we wanted to add into this, because this was going to be a massive endeavor and we would have to actually do this for every single other hero in the game.
And it's funny hearing him talk about Darth Maul being the template hero they chose to develop all other lightsaber wielding heroes in the game based on, because I think lightsaber combat in Battlefront 2 is quite divisive. Some people really love it and other people really hate it. I think it's clunky, janky, and not the Star Wars experience they're looking for. Funny also hearing him talk about Darth Maul's saber throw being the first hero ability they developed and how challenging it was to throw the saber and then get it to come back into Maul's hand. But he also talked about wanting to give each hero personality based on who they are. And a lot of this is achieved simply in the idle animations. The fact you're getting to see the characters in the menu before you spawn in as them. And all of these things put together, the mechanics, the engineering, the design, the personality, and the animation, are part of the reason why it takes 6 months to build one of these heroes. And is likely why we don't have more heroes in Battlefront 2. Because there were plans to add more heroes and reinforcements to the game. The other day, this was posted in the Star Wars Battlefront subreddit. BB-8 and BB-9E were probably the worst hero decisions the game made. Like, who asked for them? And this post had multiple former developers respond. Matt's Helga saying they wanted to do Poe Dameron, but as above, time pressure made it not possible with our deadline, and then the game was cancelled. We also know they wanted to add Ahsoka to the game, another lightsaber-wielding hero, but also ran out of time for her, especially considering they would have had to develop a whole new system for dual wield. Also, the villain to Ahsoka being the hero would have been Asajj Ventress, most likely. We also had former Battlefront 2 community manager Kevin Johnson saying, "We asked for BB-8 and BB-9E and they are too fun and I'll hear nothing more of it." I said this previously, but one of the things I'm proud about is that the droids were actually recognized with this game, and at the time allowed more people to experience some gameplay as them following on from the movies. Droideka are fairly expected in a Star Wars game like Battlefront, but something like a BB droid, that's new territory and was a brilliant moment. Yes, BB-8 and BB-9E certainly weren't most people's choices for new heroes to be added to Battlefront 2, but they do offer quite a contrast in playstyle, different to any other hero in the game. And I think this was the developers' intentions here. They didn't necessarily just want to add a new lightsaber-wielding hero, or even someone like Jango Fett. They wanted to go for something entirely different, something a bit more creative and more bold, and you gotta respect that. But had development continued, we would have also potentially seen Magna Guards in Battlefront 2. Former developer Mats Helge recently revealed, "We always wanted a new style of play to come with reinforcements, so something like the IG-100 Magna Guard." Magna Guards were of course in Battlefront 2 from 2005, and even though you couldn't use their electro stuff in that game, I was still disappointed we never saw them in EA's Battlefront 2. It's always disappointing hearing everything else the developers wanted to do with Battlefront 2 before it was cancelled. And we've known for a while that they did have plans beyond the final update, but unfortunately the game was cancelled for whatever reason. And a lot of that unfortunately has to do with the horrible launch this game had. The horrible launch surrounding microtransactions, surrounding loot boxes, the fact government laws were literally changed because of Battlefront 2. That's how bad it was.
Money!
But lead animator Harvey Newman talked about in his video how after launch, following the terrible launch the game had, morale in the studio was low, but they knew they'd built something special. And around this time, a lot of developers who'd worked on Battlefront 2 had already been shifted to develop Battlefield 5. But then as the dust settled around Battlefront 2's horrible launch, some resources were put back onto Battlefront 2, and the developers were listening to the community. Even though yes, you could argue they were being controlled by that corporate world, the developers knew they'd built a special Star Wars game and needed to try and give this thing new life. So some of DICE's resources were put back on Battlefront 2, and then a few months later, they announced the Clone Wars, they announced Supremacy, and the game had its first resurgence. They knew that Battlefront 2 just needed some tweaking, just needed some refining, and then people would be able to see how special a game it really is.
I've been looking forward to this.
A few weeks ago, this was posted to the Star Wars Battlefront Reddit. Why wasn't Ben Swallow added into the game as a skin? And former Battlefront 2 producer Ben Walk cheekily replied to this, saying, "PCs 8 years ago did not have enough RAM to handle it." Ben Swallow's too swallow for Battlefront 2. There are mods that can fix that. Now, other things the developers considered for Battlefront 2 include a horror game mode. We kind of already got that in Ewok Hunt, but someone recently asked about the zombie Geonosians from the Clone Wars and how cool a mode that would be in Battlefront 2, and Mats Helge replied to this saying, "We thought about that one as well, but we did not have a good model for zombies, but we did ponder the idea. Just not enough resources to pull it off." Isn't that always the case? So much of it is just restrictions with time, with budget, with man hours, with a lack of resources. It's impressive they built the game we have. Mats Helge also recently revealed that there were never plans to upgrade or update Starfighter Assault, saying they were never going to touch Starfighter. It wasn't made by DICE, it was made by Criterion, and the code was not similar to what we had. Every time we touched something, everything else broke. We would never update that mode. And they also knew at the time Star Wars Squadrons was being developed and was a few years down the track, so a much better version of Starfighter Assault was on the way. I always thought it'd be cool if they developed the Starfighter Assault mode more so, or added more locations perhaps that were inside the atmosphere like the Camino map, but clearly that was never going to be the case. We also got a mention of Mats from Ground to Space, with someone asking if Ground to Space could work. He said Ground to Space is a difficult thing to pull off for a balanced and fun game mode, but I believe it could be solved, and I know it's a top request from all fans. I've also had a lot of people asking me if I think Space to Ground would come to Battlefront 3. It's what they tried to achieve with the original Battlefront 3, which was cancelled in 2008, and as challenging as it would be, I think it would be a reason to make Battlefront 3, as it's the next step in the evolution of Battlefront games. If they make Battlefront 3, in some ways it has to be different or better and larger than Battlefront 2. There's so much content, so many maps, so many game modes in Battlefront 2 that I think for them to make Battlefront 3 it needs to be more refined experience, and perhaps Space to Ground is the solution to that. In some way, we do have somewhat of a Space to Ground in Battlefront 2 with Supremacy. You play the ground battle and then you go up to the capital ships and fight inside the capital ship, but ideally this should be a seamless transition where both battles are happening simultaneously.
Just like the simulation.
But what are the chances of former Battlefront 2 devs returning to DICE and returning to Battlefront? And I think Harvey gives us a good insight into the idea of this.
There's a meme out there that says that Battlefront fans can't count to 3. And it's unfortunate to see this because I feel like When the game finished, it was actually a surprise to us, but at the same time we couldn't see it coming from the moment that we kind of came back from Battlefield and got back into Battlefront. And I do think that there is regret in all of us in the team, because we feel like we actually did as much as we possibly could, but at the same time at least I don't feel like we actually should regret much, because we gave it our all. And I think the community knows this, and this is why the community is so big with Battlefront right now.
He talks about the possibility of making Battlefront 3 happen, of bringing back some of the original team.
I do hope that, just like in Star Wars, that they have normally 3s, I hope that we manage to some way, somehow, even though it's going to be nearly impossible, to make Battlefront 3 happen. But ideally, it would be amazing to actually get some of the people that actually were part of that team to come over and have some of that DNA.
Atelge also added to this a few weeks ago, saying he would also return potentially. We want to get the gang back together, but also these were just some kind of loose comments made in private chats. They didn't expect them to blow up. Nothing is necessarily serious. And even if they were serious, they wouldn't be able to tell us because they're under NDA. All of this said, there's still absolutely a chance Battlefront 3 could happen. It's just going to be years away. And I'm probably going to do a separate video on whether they should make Battlefront 2 return or just start work on a new game, Battlefront 3. All of this is like 3, 4, 5 years away though, and the developers have also confirmed this. I'll go over that stuff in more detail in another video soon. But the flip side of all this is the success of the recent Star Wars Fortnite event. Because as I reported on last week, Fortnite's player count during the Star Wars event was at a 2-year low. But at that same time, Battlefront 2's player count was peaking, seeing higher numbers than almost ever before. But Fortnite did make somewhat of a comeback with the Death Star sabotage event. This completely spiked the graph, seeing nearly 6 million players return to Fortnite and sparking the highest player count in Fortnite since November 2024, which was for the end of Chapter 5 and the reveal of Chapter 6. With Star Wars arriving in Fortnite Creative sometime soon, I think we're once again going to see a huge rise in community-made Star Wars games and Star Wars experiences, which you could argue is kind of where you can have your best experience with Star Wars right now. Some of the Star Wars mods out there are kind of wild. The Battlefront 2 stuff, I'll link videos at the end of this. You can go check them out. There are some incredible Star Wars mods being made. Unfortunately, they're only on PC, but I think that's going to extend over into Fortnite once players get their hands on all of these Star Wars assets and tools to build their own Star Wars experiences in Fortnite. I think we're going to see stuff like Battlefront 2. We're going to see Jedi Order 66 modes. We're going to see Youngling Hunt. We're going to see other hunt style modes. There's going to be so much creativity going on, and I think that'll give Star Wars gaming a real boost, but it's not necessarily the Star Wars experience we all want. Not all of us want to play Fortnite. As fun as parts of the Star Wars Fortnite event were, we want a new dedicated Star Wars multiplayer game. We want Battlefront 3. So keep sharing it, keep spreading the word, keep writing Battlefront 3 everywhere, because I guarantee you it's working.
It's working!
We made enough noise in the past few weeks to crash the Battlefront 2 servers, to break all-time records with the player count, and also EA did notice this, with the official EA Play Twitter account sharing this post about Battlefront 2. Always disappointing hearing stuff that never made it into Battlefront 2, but Battlefront is alive and well, my friends. We just need to keep talking about it, and we need to keep playing so that there's constantly enough noise for someone to realize they should make Battlefront 3. Don't forget to subscribe for some of those Star Wars mods. Watch this video here. Also come follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Discord, TikTok for more Battlefront, more Star Wars, and more me. And thanks for watching. Always remember,
Stay bombastic.